Welcome to Week in Horror.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
The podcast that deep dives all the films you love.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
The week they dropped in horror history.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
With your horror hosts, JL.
When a shirtless Sam Elliott with no mustache takes out an alligator with an oar, that's the kind of movie I'm looking for.
Eugene.
And we're just casually like, yeah, so that's probably the best way to go, light someone on fire. That's the lead.
Alex.
It would not be an original lineup if I didn't have fucking technical difficulty.
Johnny O.
Now, it's not an Amityville, or wherever it's Amityville.
And Aaron.
They got manure to work with and nothing grew from it.
News, trailers, trivia, special guests, and more.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Live show every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central at youtube.com/weekinhorror.
Welcome to prime time, bitch!
And wherever you listen to podcasts.
One by one, we will take you.
Week in Horror. Stay scared.
Welcome, horror fans. It is Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central Time. That means it's time for another episode of the Week in Horror podcast. The only podcast that can't believe it said no to free beer. And if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast host, you can join us here on YouTube for our live show where you too can get in on all the bloody fun. What are you all waiting for? Join us! And this week we are covering select horror films released August 21st through August 27th. Thank you all so much for joining us. I am JL, and with me tonight is Aaron, who is muted.
How's it going? Yeah, I'm trying to do 20 things at once. You caught me with my pants down, literally and figuratively.
That's the Week in Horror OnlyFans. So you catch it on that one. That's a secondary camera that's feeding to another stream entirely. So,
under the desk.
So unfortunately, Alex was going to be with us tonight, but Alex is currently dealing with some stuff at work that's requiring all of his attention. So Alex will not be here. So it'll be me and Aaron holding down the fort in from our respective horror man caves. As we could say, we each got a nice setup. We got a nice little collection going on.
My literal dungeon down here.
Hell yeah. We all need our little spaces. All right. So, nothing huge going on this week. It was kind of a quiet week, although they did drop the trailer. We're not going to watch it tonight, but they did drop because there's a music consideration. But they did drop the new trailer for Wednesday. Did you see that for the new Netflix series?
I didn't see the new one. I saw the previous one, though, and it already looks pretty promising, which I'm a fan of hers, and which sounds weird because I've completely forgotten her name, but, she was in The Babysitter, too, and she's been in a couple other movies. She's done a good job. I like her.
Visually, I dig it, and I like where it's going. What I got from the feeling that I got from this was very the new Sabrina. So, like the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina that released on Netflix, so we got 3 seasons of, that kind of reinvented Sabrina from the Melissa Joan Hart days and really brought it, kind of like a darker aspect to the show. I'm getting the kind of sensation that this is going to follow along those lines. It's going to be very similar in tone to the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Yeah, well, there's even looking back at the original Addams Family movies, Reese Witherspoon, was that not Reese Witherspoon?
Christina Ricci.
I forgot her name. It's Christina Ricci. I always switch their names up, and I don't know why, given that Reese is in my name. But, she was hugely popular, but there's also a little background. On YouTube, there was I think, Adult Wednesday Addams.
Right.
Short, and they were pretty funny and everything, but all of a sudden, nobody was doing anything to her to stop or discourage her, and all of a sudden, they put the kibosh on it, and that makes sense now because they decided that they were going to, especially with them doing a series instead of just a movie, they don't want that, week-to-week competition or however they choose to present it. But she's just you're never going to see a Pugsley, well, I won't say never. I mean, after seeing what they've done to the Munsters, any damn thing's possible. But you're probably not going to see a Pugsley series anytime soon.
That's the truth. I'm familiar with what that channel ran into, with what that artist ran into. Is I was recently cast in an audio dramatization of a particular Stephen King production, and I can't say too much about it because I'm still under NDA. I can just say that I was cast in this, and we unfortunately had to go on hiatus because there are other plans from a studio that is currently working on that on something else, that's working around the same IP. So the guy in charge of the production that I was casting had to pull his back because the big dogs were running with that. So I'm terribly familiar with that because it was a bummer. It was a great production we were working on and doing something really good, and then all of a sudden it was kind of like, no, got to put the hiatus so we could figure write stuff out. So that sucks. But I like the visual appeal of the new Wednesday series. It could be interesting. It's got my attention now. At first I was kind of like, but now I see this trailer and I'm kind of like, ooh, I like where they're going with this. From a visual aspect and from a tone aspect. So, and if they could pull off the characters, if Catherine Zeta-Jones and Louise Guzman, who I have full faith in, and Catherine Zeta-Jones, a little less, because who can replace Angelica Houston, right? But if she can knock it out of the park, then we're there. We just need that chemistry between Morticia and Gomez.
Yeah, it's weird to think that the remake or reboot, I think that's one of the few classic TV reboots that gives stiff competition to the original.
Right.
When you look at them, they did it better the second time around, honestly, which they had more freedom to, because back in the day, you couldn't even sleep in the same damn bed, much less include real romance in your story. But that they've got competition as far as Earth Adams Family goes and how they're going to do it, but it is possible.
Could be interesting stuff. All right. Well, before we dive into tonight's film selections, of which we had some interesting ones this week, let's say hi to who we've got in the live chat. Let's make sure we get this up. Bam, there is the freshly updated banner with all of our amazing patrons who help us to make this show possible. So always remember, if you're interested, you can check out, the link is in the description, patreon.com/weekinhorror, and you can see how you can support the show with tiers as low as $1. So thank you to all of those amazing patrons. We do appreciate and love you for all the support you give. In the chat, we got Tony Regime was first. Good to see you, Tony Regime. Thanks so much for being here with all the obligatory ghosts. We do appreciate it. Thanks so much. Raven Darkstar is here. Good to see you, Raven Darkstar. And says hi, hello, all when you get here. Appreciate that they were here early. Travis Brown, a huge supporter of the shows here, says good evening, boils and ghouls. And I can't do the Crypt Keeper laugh; it's too high pitch. John Kassir is so much better at that than I am. Nemo813 is here, but good to see you, Travis. Nemo813 is here. Good to see you, Nemo. Thanks so much for being here. Says hi, everyone. Same as Facty's in the house. Says hey, good to see you, Facty. Appreciate you being here. Elizabeth Sylvester, another one of our amazing long-term supporters. Good to see you, Elizabeth. Thanks for hanging out. Says, hey, guys, how are you? We are doing great. It's going to be an interesting one tonight. Cindy Johnson is here as well. Good to see you, Cindy. Thanks so much for being here. Says, good evening. Good evening to you. Nurse Donnie Don. Good to see you, Nurse. Hey, hello, Nurse. I totally fucked up the timing on that. I wanted the timing to be good. I should have done that. I'm going to have it prepped for next time. She says, hi, good to see you, Nurse. Skooma Cat as well says, good evening, good to see you, Skooma Cat. Thanks so much for being here. Fred Knott says, wait, did I catch the beginning? And with movies, I actually know it happens sometimes. So we're glad you could be here, Fred. Thanks so much, bud. We do appreciate it. Angel Rivera is here, says, what up, Week in Horror? And Aaron Reese, we're all Week in Horror here. All of us are Week in Horror here. So good to see you, Angel. We do appreciate it. Thank you so much. Jinju's in the house says, hello, everyone. Necrophilia might be acceptable in the summer because you're cuddling up to a cold one. That's hardcore. That's all I'll say about that.
Global warming is an issue. I'm just saying.
Nemo813 says, as far as Wednesday Addams goes to Hogwarts, it's kind of looking like that a little bit, like the academy for people that are like her. So I'm kind of curious where they're going to go. I am. Let's see. Oh, Angel Rivera said, I cringed when the water polo player got bitten. That's right, because there's a scene where she and Pugsley are enrolled in a normal school, and the other boys are tormenting Pugsley in the pool. And so in her, she's like, I am the only one who gets to torture my brother. And she dumps a load of piranhas into the pool. All right. Let's see. Yep, Carolyn Jones from the 60s Adams Family. Hell yes. Thank you, Travis. All right, Mike the Honey Badger's here. Yo, hey, it's Boom from a game I play. I played Ebony on my phone. And that's a good friend we have here. So good to see you, Boom. Thanks for hanging out for your very first week in horror. I hope you dig the show. We do appreciate it. Watts of Wisdom's in the house. Good to see you, Watts. Thanks, another friend from in game. Good to see you, Watts. Hope you enjoy the show. Donnie Does That's here. Says, hey everybody. Good to see everybody. Yeah, I'm sorry. I ate before the show and I didn't mean to spit on camera. These are the things that happen. We're doing it. This is live. Live performances. You never know what'll go down, right?
Seat of your pants completely tonight.
Oh, Mark Little is here. Says, howdy. Lid's here. Good to see you. Mark, thanks so much. Do appreciate it. And in fact, he says, I gotta be honest. When I first heard Week in Horror, I thought it was Weekend Horror, but I couldn't figure out why it was on a Wednesday. So to clarify, for those who don't know, Week in Horror covers. We record the show on Wednesday nights in the middle of the week, and then we do the live show now. But the audio from the show gets released the following Sunday. So this one covers next Sunday through the full week. These are the movies that released next week from Sunday to that full week. So you can get that's just how it wound up getting set up, so we could have plenty of time in order so people could listen to the show and then hear movies and watch them the week that they came out. So something cool. And the Jord, I see you there, says, I'm saying hi to you now. Good to see you. And the Jord said, and Trina Michelin, good to see you, Trina. Thanks so much for being here. Got a lot of new faces in the live chat tonight. So I hope you all enjoy the show. Thank you so much for hanging out. We do appreciate it. And yes, Tony Regime, I do play Ebony. I play Ebony. I got hooked on the game, and it says it take him far too much of his time. I managed to balance it because I don't play because I've taken a break from World of Warcraft, so I don't really play that. I haven't played it in months now. My guild is probably wondering where the hell I went, but yeah. So I have that, and it's on my phone, so I can play it on the go.
I don't play those games because I know that they would just absolutely eat my life completely. Like, I'm sitting here chain smoking. Half the time I've got liquor beside me. Like, I don't need more addictions. I'm okay. I'm full up right now.
I definitely get that. Absolutely. All right. Well, I know there wasn't much to talk about, but we said hi to everybody in the chat, and of course I'll catch anybody as soon as they come in. So we appreciate everybody being here and everybody who's for supporting the show. What do you say we dive into it, Aaron? What do we have first? You want to get us started?
Yeah, first up, we got a legend from maybe not for the movie, but for the background. It's from August 23rd, 1996, The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Let's check out this trailer.
Remote corner of the South Pacific, an exiled scientist created something impossible. Unmistakably human, undeniably animal. On the island of Dr. Moreau.
I'd like to present my children.
Father?
Oh my God.
Now he's upset the balance of nature.
Have you ever considered that for every minute we're studying them, that they are studying us?
And with the key of science,
What's going on?
he's unlocked the gates of hell. Marlon Brando, Val Kilmer, David Thewlis, in the terrifying motion picture event of the year. There is no escape from the island of Dr. Moreau. Directed by John Frankenheimer.
I love how, like, there's no escape from, and that's what the ending is. That's exactly what the ending is.
He fully escapes from it. Oh, man. Oh, man. So, yeah, go ahead and give it the breakdown, because there's so, I mean,
most people are familiar with the plot, but we'll give a quick rundown. Directed by John Frankenheimer and Richard Stanley. And that one, that's a little complicated, but basically Stanley started out, was off the project, and Frankenheimer took over. Written by Richard Stanley and Ron Hutchinson, and based on the story by H.G. Wells. Starring Nelson De La Rosa, Tamara Morrison, Daniel Rigney, Fairuza Balk, Val Kilmer, Marlon Brando, and David Thewlis. And essentially, it is about a guy that ends up stranded on an island where a doctor has been tinkering with genetics and combined animal with human genetics. So you have humanoid creatures with animal features in different proportions and different types. And it breaks down, and it doesn't break down scientifically like you expect. It does it societally until the island ends up in chaos, and the main characters have to survive that chaos, and some do and some don't. A lot of them don't. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, the background with Richard Stanley and stuff, there's actually a documentary that would do a way better job of illustrating everything that happened with that. But, all that chaos surrounding it beforehand, because you know more about what happened with Richard Stanley leading up to this, because he had the Lovecraft trilogy, which I didn't know about till far afterward that it had been canceled, which broke my heart. And it's due to the fact that he was a little bit of a bastard, to be honest about it. And got himself involved in some sexual harassment allegations. But this is the third time it's been adapted, but it's always the first time that comes up when you search, because it had a lot of notoriety around it due to the production, because it had that. It had a lot of your standard issues you see on a film trying to get it delivered. But the thing that really stood out to me most about it is, so you have the original story tends to focus more on a kind of from a Victorian point of view about man and God and genetics and things like that. But really, there's also some heavy statements here, I think, on society, because you've got these individuals who they haven't developed their morals in the same way that we have. They've gotten it from one guy who's tried to communicate it to them, and he lays down these rules without ever really giving them any meaning. It's just, you do this or you get punished. That's a child mindset. When you develop into maturity, you really should be understanding why you are or aren't doing something. So when the breakdown happens, when they eliminate that negative feedback, it erupts into chaos. And it actually kind of, to me, to a degree, it mirrored how you see some societies have developed, where they've gone from religious institutions being in control, or a feudal structure reinforced by religious institutions. All of a sudden you've got what's essentially a dictatorship. And the guy's got the gun, so he controls everything. I'm the man with the gun, I make the rules. And he loses that control. It's Hyena, or Hyena Swine, as he calls them on there, has the guns. He has a guy who back him up. And he does make a point when he tells them, there can only be a first God. There can only be a one God. And he turns on him and he starts killing the others. Because when you have a dictatorship, somebody is always there to backstab you and take control. And he has the chance to kill Hyena himself. He's got the gun in his hands, and he doesn't do it. He lets the individuals that live on the island, the animal hybrids, do it. So to me, that's a statement on the fact that to really value your freedom, to really be willing to preserve it, you have to be willing to endanger yourself, to take that risk, and to honestly shed blood to do it. Because you see countries go through this all the time, where it's, somebody walks in, tries to be the big great savior, set up a government, it falls, and until enough of them die, native individuals die and kill, it never comes to a point of stability. And that was the biggest thing that jumped out at me, honestly. And I think they kind of they made a point, but they missed the original point of the story, which was discussing, us tinkering with what it is to be human, what it is to be animal, what elevates us above that. It just fell in the background.
It's such an important thing that was what bums me out the most about it. I'm an avid reader, and I love the original H.G. Wells novel. Despite some bad science that was in there, because the understanding of what was going on, genetically speaking, was pretty rudimentary. But nonetheless, it was an interesting concept, and this idea of man playing God, and the notoriety around the 1996 version pretty much spoiled that. So now it's almost like the Island of Dr. Moreau is synonymous with, Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer and the fuck up that this movie was, instead of what H.G. Wells was originally trying to talk about. And what they managed to do quite well in the first two iterations, which the first one was Island of Lost Souls in 1932, and the second one was the Island of Dr. Moreau in 1977. And so, coming back to this one and trying to put this one together, unfortunately, it was just the production itself took away from what was originally being talked about. And the original story being highly inspired, but not only by current advancements in science. H.G. Wells was always fascinated with such things. And of course, the idea, because at this time in the 1800s, when he wrote the original novel in 1896, you look at the time of like the Great White Hunter and colonial explorers who were going into the dark hearts of Africa, and this is where the inspiration for tales like Heart of Darkness came from, which inspired Apocalypse Now. And so, like, taking concepts like this of foreign, you could call them invaders, going into native territories that are untouched and unblemished, and introducing new concepts and new thoughts and new ideas of a grander, wider world, and throwing these stable little communities into absolute chaos, which is ostensibly what David Thewlis's character does, what Edward Douglas does, or his original character does, is he winds up on this island and winds up being the outsider coming in, very Huxleyan, very Brave New World, the outsider coming into the society and destabilizing it with these thoughts and everything that this community's God never taught them about. So a very, very shielded deal. There's so many parallels to, obviously H.G. Wells was paralleling man's powerlessness in the face of nature, in the face of instinct, that reason itself is often cannot overcome instinctual drive and desire, and of course his commentary on science and man tinkering with things that we may not understand, and of course a heavy, heavy Christianity allegory there of God creating in his eyes, God creating a small group of individuals that had a very rudimentary system and they were shielded, but once the outside world came in, everything became destabilized and, upset the plan. And ultimately resulted in the destruction of the God, which is essentially what happens with Moreau, is that once Edward comes into it and all of a sudden they're aware of this outside world, things quickly fall apart. Who's the real God? And that's when things go, like as Eugene would say, that's when shit gets real. But that's what I thought. But that's what I love about the old stories. Going all the way back to like the modern Prometheus, because if you look at the Frankenstein mythology, the same thing happened there, where we eventually get to a point where we've commercialized it to a point that we begin to lose what the original story was trying to say. The Frankenstein movies you get today, nowadays, Frankenstein is damn near a comedic element. I think the last thing I saw a movie that had a legitimate Frankenstein in was Van Helsing. Well, no, there was I, Frankenstein, but that was terrible with Aaron Eckhart, but that was a terrible movie. It was based off a graphic novel, I think, or a comic book. But the last legitimate Frankenstein was Van Helsing with huge jacked man, and in that one he was a comic element. It was just comedic relief, and that's what. But if you go back and read Modern Prometheus by Mary Shelley, that's an intriguing story of man attempting to wrest his control over nature, and then nature never being able to really be fundamentally controlled by man, and always because we're just humans, and man's hubris is what that story was about. And I really, really like that, but unfortunately these things have kind of been lost, which is a shame. I wanted to kind of like look back and say, look at the history of these things, like you were bringing up, like what was intended with these stories, what was lost, what do you not get in a freaking adaptation of this classic novel? How bad has it gotten? And then, of course, is, the legendary, notorious production that this was, which was, like, initially, from all intents and purposes, from what I read, it started out okay. Like, everything started out okay. Pre-production went smooth. Everyone was like, hell yes, let's do this. And then, you know what I think it was? Because they cast Bruce Willis. They can't, like Kevin Smith said, they brought Bruce Willis in, and then the shit just goes pear-shaped. But they brought Bruce Willis in, And the first major thing was Bruce ended up starting divorce proceedings with his wife Demi, and that's when shit just like went sideways. And before we dive further into that, I just want to say hi to some new people that popped into the chat. I see Alien X Gaming is here. Good to see you. It's been a while, sir. Glad you're doing okay. Good to see you. JH Ostrick is here. Says belated hello. Good to see you, JH. Thank you so much for hanging out. As well as the Triggered Limey is here. Says hello, you beautiful bastards. Good to see you, Triggered Limey. Thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. And Sarcasm says, shit, I'm Johnny. I mean late. Yeah, no doubt. Oh, Tony Regime, De Niro as Frankenstein's monster was pretty good. That was a good one that managed to kind of like capture what Shelley was going for. I liked the De Niro Frankenstein. I really, really did. And Tesla Bitten is here. Good to see you, Tesla. Go ahead.
I was going to say, they did a good job in Penny Dreadful. They took a different turn on that.
Right,
and they picked
yes.
Frankenstein with Daniel Radcliffe and James McAvoy. But that was less about the monster and more about Igor. That one, I like that one. Not super serious, but entertaining enough.
Entertaining, yeah. So, but the production on this, and well, there's an entire documentary that could be recommended. What was the name of it again?
It's actually called The Island of Dr. Moreau, like something into chaos
like
or something
Journey
like that.
into... I can't remember what the name of the Lost Soul, the doomed journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau. That was it.
Okay.
And so there's an entire documentary that was produced based on the incredible chaos that occurred when making this movie. So it kicks off. We started off like Bruce Willis was originally cast in the lead role, and I think so originally it was supposed to be Bruce Willis and James Woods were going to be in the roles, but then Bruce Willis had to drop out because he started divorce proceedings against Demi Moore, and then Rob Morrow was brought in, and then James Woods had to leave, and then when James Woods left, I think there was a bunch of people that were just switching around parts until eventually Rob Morrow was in and Val Kilmer was in, and then Rob Morrow quit, I think, 2 days into production because he couldn't handle the hostility of what was going on on set. It was too stressful for him. So he bailed out, and then they brought in David Thewlis almost oh, we need you in a movie. They threw him in this movie. And then Val Kilmer got moved to the Montgomery slot, and then you had Marlon Brando. And pretty much everybody signed on to the picture because they wanted to work with Marlon Brando. I mean, who would pass up the opportunity? But quickly, things spiraled out of control. The weather was absolutely excruciating. They were shooting on the coast of Australia. The weather was out of control, and the budget began to skyrocket. Stan Winston's... I'll give it this. Stan Winston's work in this, his animal hybrid creatures, were fucking phenomenal.
Oh, yeah. They're the best thing about it, honestly.
Right. Especially like Ron Perlman's makeup. I thought Ron Perlman was magnificent, and you mistaken he was the horned, the sayer of the law character. But then, unfortunately, tragedy struck, and Marlon Brando's daughter, Cheyenne, passed away. And so that left him in an emotional state in which he kind of like retreated to his personal island. They didn't know if he was ever going to show up. Val Kilmer's wife, Joanne Whaley, who he met on the set of Willow, she initiated divorce proceedings against him. So he was in an absolute state, and Stanley could not control all of this chaos. And then all of a sudden the studio came in and they summarily fired his ass and brought in John Frankenheimer. Frankenheimer is kind of one of the old school, like one of the last old school directors who like takes no shit. And Frankenheimer came in, put the hammer down, and said, "We're enough of this," and got the wheels rolling on the bus. Despite all the chaos, it eventually got the movie done. But with so much chaos going on, I'm surprised they didn't cancel it. They just kept funneling money into this thing to make sure it happened.
Yeah, it from the sounds of everything, it went from because. Stanley was obsessed. They found him camped out near the set, like in that area, hiding after he was fired. And it went from being a visionary production, which was plagued with problems, to a business production where just get it done. And it suffered in some ways because of that. And it's not just the notoriety surrounding it. There are some issues with the production and everything. I don't think it's that bad a movie. People want to portray it as a chaotic mess, and I don't think it is. It may have missed hitting the point they originally were trying to hit, but as far as keeping you entertained, it satisfied that for me. Anything. So,
the only evidence I could see of that, like chaotic, was in the editing. Was that on occasionally while you're watching, there are some really hard cuts that will cut from one thing, and there's no interstitials, there's no transitional shots. It's literally just bam, and then we're on to the next thing. And usually that's evidence of something that they had unusable footage, or something had gone off, and they just needed to jump. So it's like, a lot of those hard cuts are really obvious, but that's the only indication I could see that things kind of went rough. They did well.
Yeah, it's a feeling of they're trying to get too much into too little time. So instead of, weaving the story and moving naturally, better word, from event to event, it's just like, and then this happened, and this happened, and it's your drunken story where, like, you won't fucking believe it. So this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And they're nailing it out too fast, and it does create a little, it interrupts the suspension of disbelief a little bit. But I think everybody that was on board did a fairly good job at their part. I mean, yes, Val Kilmer to play a crazy person. You're getting a crazy person, especially in that era, because he was like at the peak of out of his mind back then. But
Brando was a little off of his rocker as well, because he refused to memorize his lines, and he had to have his lines fed to him in an earpiece by his assistant so that he could actually say them. And then even then, he would sometimes improv and would just like say stuff, that kind of came to mind.
Yeah, he's had that habit for a while. I'm trying to remember which production it was where they complained because he wanted his lines on like a piece of paper on the actor, so that was right in front of him, so that like they couldn't show both of them in the same shot. It was always Brando and then the back of the other actor, because he had to have the line right there. And I don't know if he just couldn't memorize it or he stopped giving a shit at a point, but he remained a great actor, but he was a pain in the ass toward the end, from what I understand.
Agreed.
But he
Frankenheimer said that the minute they concluded Val Kilmer's shots, like the minute his last scene was done, it was like, cut, get that bastard off my set. It's like, get the hell out of here. So Frankenheimer was having none of Val Kilmer. He couldn't stand him. And then as it turns around, Stanley, I thought this was the absolute coolest thing. And if you look carefully, you can notice it. But Stanley kind of had a nervous breakdown after the whole thing went down. And the number one reason that he was summarily dismissed was because he clashed with the studio a lot. There was like, he refused to go to studio meetings, and he refused to like kowtow to whatever was coming from the higher ups. He wanted it to be his vision, and that was problematic for them. So eventually he became such a pain in the ass that they let him go. He had a bit of a nervous breakdown, and he retreated to this little camp area where he was holed up. And as it turns out, while he was trying to recuperate from the mental breakdown, the emotional breakdown that he was having, the members of the production crew that he had hired found him, like hang out there, and kind of helped him to recuperate, and then eventually were able to sneak him back on set. And he is as one of the extras. He is one of the dogmen towards the end in the chaos scenes, full costume. There was Richard Stanley as finally a part of the production that he initially had kicked off, which was wild, because Richard Stanley was the one that secured Brando. And by securing Brando, he was the one that secured everybody else. Simply because, he's South African born, and he's actually related to, I think it was Lord Stanley, who was one of the explorers that was an inspiration for Heart of Darkness. So he's got deep ties to these original stories. That's what impressed Brando. And Brando was like, oh, this is amazing. You really get it. Now let's go ahead and do this production. And it was the only reason that Stanley stayed on as long as he did, just because he had Brando fighting for him. But he kind of lost that power when Brando's daughter passed away. When she passed, Brando kind of retreated to his private island, was no longer there to back Stanley up, and Stanley was kind of alone, and that's why he was summarily dismissed. But as it turns out, towards the end at the wrap party, Stanley showed up to the wrap party, or I guess maybe it was the premiere like this, and Val Kilmer came up and professedly apologized for his role in getting him dismissed, because Kilmer recognized he was in a bad state. He was pissed off all the time because of what was going on with his ex-wife, and it was just absolute chaos. But I mean, it's crazy that they managed to get this thing done. And it always bugged me that what it could have been was lost because of ego, because of people's intractable visions, the inability to compromise, or the unwillingness to compromise on something that somebody felt was very, very important, and a whole bunch of chaos and unpredictable tragedy. And then, of course, I heard the weather was atrocious. It was just bad, especially for the actors who are sitting around in these full body animal suits and trying to deal with this crap, deal with this. It's, but, we got what we got.
They probably smelled like Marlon Brando's testicles wearing those in that humidity.
I tell you, Brando, I get such an absolute kick out of him. Going back and watching this, I got such a kick out of him with his little ice hat, which he called his caloric reducer or something like this.
Yeah, caloric converter.
Caloric converter, that was it. So,
bucket.
And apparently Fairuza Balk almost bailed on the production as well, because when she'd heard that, because Fairuza Balk, this is an early production, fairly early production for her as far as when she was breaking into the mainstream from being a child actress and going into adult fare. She almost bailed because she flipped out and she got into a screaming match with one of the producers when she found out that Stanley had been let go. And then she jumped in a rented limousine and drove all the way back to Sydney. She's like, she's like, F this, I'm done. She jumps in a car and has her assistant drive her back to Sydney, which is 2,400 kilometers away. And then all the while when she arrives there, she's on the phone with her agent who says, they have you under contract. They will destroy your career if you don't get your ass back on that set. And she was like, oh. And so she turned around and came back.
Yeah, sorry to say, she's fairly early. That you can't make sacrifice moves like that when you don't have negotiating power.
You just did not have the clout. But I admire her. I truly respect her, standing up.
Yeah, it sounds like everybody, that, or at least the originals on the project, stood by Stanley. They want him to do it, but I don't think he was up to it. Whatever series of events led to him, breaking down, I think it was already underway, and I don't think he, had it in him to push through with this, which movies like this, you mentioned Frankenstein, and there are a few others. So they were all made during the era of, it's kind of a precipice point when the Industrial Revolution is under full swing. Mm-hmm. This and a few others have come along as computer technology has advanced, allow us to study genetics and stuff. And you have really got to, you're trying to a great degree, or at least the studios are trying to run on the title power of the original book and the movies. Like in the case of Frankenstein, they've come since, but you've really got to have a talent for converting it to the modern era, and a lot of people just lack that. It takes some subtlety and just coming in like they did in the aftermath and just get it done. It doesn't make it work. You can get something on film, you get it in the can, and about it.
Yeah.
But
Sarcasm brings up that the local police radio kept cutting into Brando's dialogue feed through his earpiece, and he cared so little that he just repeated what he was hearing, because I think it was, there's a robbery at the Woolsworth, and he just said that on camera, and there's a robbery at the Woolsworth.
We've got a 1022. Marlon, you're drifting again.
Rodin LSN brings up, Ron Perlman has stories about the production. I would love to hear those, because Ron Perlman is typically plays as far as I've known Ron through the years and met him a few times and gotten to chat with him. He's a very he's a very down to earth, very kind of chill dude, and not really he doesn't gossip a lot. And he's not one to just dish on everything, here's all the latest tidbits. He's just very cool. He's just a down-to-earth actor. And I'd love to hear the stories that he has to tell on this one. I'm definitely going to go back and I'm going to watch Lost Soul again and see if there's any bits and pieces in it that I missed. But it is an entire documentary based on the fuck-up that this movie was.
That alone, when the story behind the movie is somewhat more interesting than the movie, that, shit went crazy. All right, so I think it's about that time. The question we have for you is this: is this story still strong enough to be remade? Yes, no, any ideas? Go ahead and you can get a hold of us at weekinhorror@gmail.com. Drop it in the comments or in the live chat. And after this fuck up of a movie, I would say, yeah, we should probably retry it.
I think so. I think with the level of with the quality of practical effects that we can achieve today, with the legacies of Stan Winston behind the Stan Winston Studios and all the work that can be and like what we can achieve today, I think this could easily be remade. And I can think of a number of actors that I think would be amazing. Could you imagine Idris Elba in the Edward role?
Oh, God. And see, that's the thing, too. That's one of the few times I would advocate for more CGI, because you got to use a tropical setting. It's going to be hot as shit. You can't do it in a studio, and you got people in costume. So I would advocate for doing not minimal practical effects, but keep it reasonable, and then supplement it with CGI. And that way you can keep the focus on the story itself instead of worrying about, you know, somebody dropping dead in the middle of the production because they're wearing 3 layers of latex.
Oh, let's see here. Anna is in the house. Good to see you, Anna, one of our longtime supporters. Good to see you, Anna. Thanks so much for being here. And Travis Brown says, we have enough remakes and CGI will hurt Dr. Moreau. That's true. And there have only been 3 iterations of this over a span of like 60 years, I think, since 1933, actually like 70 years. So we've only had 3 Dr. Moreau movies. I think this one is ripe. This is, it's 2022. I think this one is probably, I'm willing to bet, considering so much time has gone by since 1996, I think that this has been shelved for enough time that I think someone will probably pick this up. It's probably cooking somewhere for someone to do a remake of this, but it will require a substantial budget and a really excellent planning to pull this one off. But I absolutely think this could definitely be remade.
Well, the only contra argument I would have to it is if they try to do it off the publicity of the documentary, and if they do that, the worst thing for it, because they're not trying for authenticity of story or to try to tell a story. They're just trying to get something under the title and out there to draw people in, and it's going to be a mess.
Yeah, I want something. I want something that feels very Master and Commander. You know, that feels very Master and Commander. I want that kind of focus and mentality on the characters and on the technology at the time. And I want it to be like he says, Tony Regime says, yes, but only if they said it in the late 1800s, early 1900s, so they can focus on the original story and its subtext. Absolutely, pay real, true appreciation to the source material. I think that is what, and magnificent practical effects. That will make a fantastic damn movie. If I had the budget, I would shoot that fucker. And I can tell you straight up, I don't know who I would cast as Moreau. Okay, or even Montgomery, but I do know. I may cast I'd probably cast like Boyd Holbrook, because he can be effectively creepy. He was pretty creepy in the Sandman, in the new Sandman series, as Corinthian. But I would definitely cast Idris Elba as Edward Prentice, or Edward Douglas.
Yeah, I've got no idea. I'm trying to think, because you've got to have somebody with like an ego as big as the fucking Pacific to play Moreau.
Yeah, you need that God, that I'm God kind of mentality.
Yeah, but then you got to combat them on set because suddenly they're running shit.
If he was younger, I'd cast Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins can pull that off, but he's just too old now. Because I mean, to have him out there in that heat, that would be friggin' brutal. So I think he's just gotten up there way too up there in age. But I'm talking like Red Dragon. Or maybe even like that era, I think that he would have been fantastic.
Yeah, and that's one thing you have to worry about too, and that's what there are multiple productions that have intentionally looked for newcomers and parts like that because they don't want the actor overshadowing the part. Sure. So maybe that's an argument for getting somebody new that is up to it, so that we're not seeing, the Island of Anthony Hopkins. Instead, you're getting Dr. Moreau. You don't have presumptions about this person not, overshadowing the character completely. It's a tactic that's worked. They've done it in a few movies to great effect.
Nemo says Christoph Waltz is Moreau. I don't know about that. His vocal mannerisms, maybe. Tony Regime says Tom Baker would be great as Dr. Moreau. And actually, I always thought Peter Capaldi could be a good Moreau, especially a period Moreau.
Yeah, he might
That
be
could be
able to pull it off. Now I'm stuck with Christoph Waltz in my head playing the part. But you see, I am God here.
All right. Definitely let us know what you think. Could this movie be remade? We absolutely think it could. Let us know in the comments below or at weekinhorror@gmail.com. All right, jumping on to our next one. Down a little further into the barrel tonight.
Yeah,
this one.
Big.
Released. This is interesting because this one was shot near where I live, so not that far from where I live now. So I actually recognized some areas that they were shooting in. But released August 25th, 2018, we have Camp Cold Brook, which I have some interesting things to say about. Let's check out this trailer.
Probably better than the movie.
Jack. It's been a great run. 3 seasons in TV is saying something nowadays. Reality TV just doesn't have the legs right now.
We're on the cusp of something really big. We're about to shoot it now.
I hate his face.
What is it?
I really do.
We produce one ball-busting, scare the living out of our audience episode.
I say we do Winchester House.
No way. Place is lame. What the hell is wrong with you? This is it. We are all out on our asses if we don't come up with something big.
I have one. It's a camp. It's called Cold Brook.
So the official police report is apparently this woman, she went into the camp one night and she poisoned and drowned everybody.
We're sorry. Your call cannot be completed as dialed. That place is marked.
What do you mean by marked?
Haven't seen one ghost, but hey, it's been out, right?
Cheers.
Everybody around here seems to think it's best just left in the past.
All right, folks, let's do this. We got a lot to do. Let's get her done. Let's make this home base.
You got no cell phone service up here, so once we're gone, you're on your own.
We're in trouble now.
We may have some.
Oh my God.
This is all just hysteria and superstition.
You know what we did.
We can't just leave.
You need to listen to me, okay? It's not worth it.
I say we burn the damn place down and we walk out together.
I got too much riding on this. We all do.
All right. That was Camp Cold Brook. As soon as I pull up my damn notes, I almost didn't want to. Directed by Andy Palmer and written by Alex Carl, starring Danielle Harris and Chad Michael Murray, and a score of other people that, Courtney Gaines, Michael Eric Reed, Kate Jones, and Candace D. Vismer. The film follows a paranormal reality show team that is on the verge, whose show is on the verge of cancellation, and they set out to check out the abandoned Camp Cold Brook where a mass murder had taken place decades previously, and of course all hell breaks loose once they get on site because the ghosts in this one are real. Okay, it first has to be stated, the premise on this one was not bad. I could see on paper how this movie would work. And why it would probably get... have a good night, Tony. Good to see you. Thanks so much for hanging out. And Raven Darkstar, it was not a poor ripoff of Friday the 13th. So... how to put this into words? Because I don't want to sound like I have this reputation of trying to polish turds, and I'm definitely not going to try to polish turds because I actually have a real legitimate problem with this movie, but I can see why on paper that this would work, and it's chiefly because of the inspiration behind the movie. The problem was in the execution. That's what you have. That was the biggest failing in this. Is that from a cinematography perspective, especially when you're doing found footage with secured cameras and everything, you can do a lot. You have a lot of versatility when you have stationary cameras and then you have people with handhelds, and then you're also shooting the movie as you would shoot a normal movie. So there's a lot of versatility that could have been done here, but it was not utilized, which was weird. And I think it's probably because the budget was so limited. You also have what I think is a terrible miscasting. You had characters that couldn't bring any life to the people that they were playing. I, for one, really can't stand Chad Michael Murray. I've never thought that he was a very versatile actor or very deep. And a complete, waste of Danielle Harris, who's one of my favorite Scream queens. And I hate seeing her just put in as a prop in order to gain attention. It's like, here's Danielle Lewis, and she serves really no purpose, and then she gets smoked so we can get her out of the way. Or maybe because she's getting too expensive and we need to get her out of the production. All in all, nothing but JV missteps across the board as far as production quality goes, especially when where they were shooting offers plenty of production value. The problem is that they zigged when they should have zagged, and they did not put the money that they had where it should have gone in order to make this happen. And that's why this film completely fails in its execution. But the premise in and of itself is actually not bad, because it's inspired by actual legitimate events, which we'll dive into in a second. But as far I wrote in LS we can only afford it for 6 days. probably, because she could have shot all that stuff in less than a week. But as far as a film goes, as far as filmmaking goes, definitely JV choices, amateur, I would say college level. Just bring people and bring bodies in to hold cameras and grip stuff and just get this thing shot as simply and quickly as possible.
Yeah, they basically just jammed every horror trope they could into one movie, and that can be fun, but if it's properly executed, but you have to have the attitude that you're doing this. But they did it and thought they were going to come out with, something akin, I won't say a masterpiece, but a good movie, and they didn't achieve it because you've got, it's within the moratorium, so I can't give away everything, even though if I did, it still wouldn't ruin a movie because it sucks. But it's got a cliche plot. The passage of time is awkward as hell on it because there's no natural rhythm to it to keep you involved. It just snaps.
They just drop those interstitials where they would just drop day 1, day 2, day 3.
Yeah.
It's it completely throws the tone of the film off, because those hit frenetic with and the way that they were presented on screen. It's they're high energy, and then the energy the rest of the movie is very low, which was weird.
Yeah, it's and they you've got day 1 daytime, they were safe, some weirdness at night. Then day 2 during the day, he has something happen to him, but it's damn near just a prank. Whereas if you're careful about it, like I've said before, you establish rules, and then you can break those rules to great effect, because you could portray that, they're safe during the daytime, and all of a sudden they're not, and it means it's ramped up and it's shocked. But it does just something not really scary during the day, and all of a sudden we're into night phase, almost like a video game. They drop in that really cheesy stinger music. I hate it when a scary sound or sight occurs. Let it occur. In the 80s, stinger music was okay. Now it's not. Just let it stand for itself. Let it develop itself. Instead, it's the whole every time something scary happens, and it completely ruins it. But he's saying a bad version of Ghostbusters. It felt more like a bad version of Grave Encounters, because it's a whole Ghostbusters investigating. They don't believe, they're taking advantage, and they run into something horrible, that makes a non-believer believe. But it's been done. It was done. Grave Encounters was good, but that particular piece, the non-believer, was done to even better effect before that. And it's done so much that I think it's become cliche at this point.
Agreed.
Let it have a vacation. Let it rest. We'll come back and check on it later.
That was the worst. I understand the rule of threes. And the rule of threes is an important rule of thumb, is that if you're comedy happens in threes, scares happen in threes, you typically have one, then you have a second, then you can vary up as to when those beats occur, but the beats are typically very obvious. You have one show up, then a second show up, then a third show up, and the third one is where the hit goes. Or in comedy, the third is where the laugh comes from. In the scare, the third one is where and I get that, but you don't have to always adhere to it. As, like I said, it's one of those tropes that they happen to throw in there, and I hate when shit is telegraphed on film, And because it's one of the easiest things to never do, to never telegraph your shit. And the scene when Danielle Harris is picking up is looking through the camera and seeing the stuff, and then and there's nothing there, and she picks it up and she sees it again, there's nothing there. You already know what's going to happen on the third one, and it made it into the trailer. So it's kind of like when they telegraphed everything they were going to do. Everything was there was very, very little. There was very little CGI effect in this, and all of it was, I'll give them that. It was all practical effects. But the problem is, when you have a place that's like supposedly filled with spirits, filled with ghosts, you're going to need to rely on some camera trickery. If not CGI, then really strong in-camera effects, which you can do with light and shadow, which they do not pull off in this. Moments when there are people that move, like when there are shadows that move, they did not use forced perspective. They did not use light and shadow to their advantage. They simply shot things as it was happening, and it was very, very obvious. It's kind of like, why do this? Why telegraph your shit? Why, if you're trying to make something, if you're trying to, that's where it fails in the execution. It was just very, very lazy filmmaking. It could have been a lot better because going on paper what they had. Now, what really, really aggravated me about this is because because they shot up here in Oklahoma, and in Oklahoma, a few decades ago, there was a triple homicide that took place at a Girl Scout camp, and many people will remember them, the true crime of the story called the Girl Scout murders, in which 3 Girl Scouts were found murdered at a Girl Scout camp, and after the event, the Girl Scout camp was closed down. It was completely shuttered. Nobody was allowed in, which is ostensibly what this story is about. There's brutal murders that occurred at camp, and then the owner shut it off completely, and they just left it to rot. They just never went in there again, and nobody ever spoke about it. It was kind of became like the local haunted place that nobody ever went to. And the same thing actually exists here in Oklahoma. And I can't remember specifically the year it took place, but it was the Girl Scout murders, in which 3 girls were tragically killed. And I'm not sure they ever found the perpetrator who actually did it. So I'm pretty sure they're still unsolved. Many people may have heard of it because music artist Kristen Chenoweth was a Girl Scout and was originally supposed to be on that trip, but she fell ill, and so she never went. So she stayed home, and the other girls unfortunately lost their lives. So that was a major, major event in Oklahoma. The town that it took place in nothing like this had ever occurred. This is like small town Oklahoma. This is one of those moments where nothing terrible ever happens here. This was the most horrible thing that ever occurred. And it made nationwide news, and that's where the inspiration for this movie comes from. That's where the writers took their inspiration, and they pulled a lot from it. But there was and I get drawing horror films from real life. I get pulling your inspiration from there. But there has to be, and this may be just my opinion, maybe I'm alone in this, I don't know, I just want to get your opinion. There has to be a level of respect paid to the original story, to what originally went down. I would say approach the project with a level of hubris. Or so with is it hubris? Did I use the right term?
A lack of hubris.
With a lack of hubris, okay? Approach it with respect, know where you're coming from, and treat it kindly, because where you're treading is very, very difficult, is a very difficult topic, or a very difficult situation to talk about. This movie did not do that. This movie essentially took a real life tragedy that took place and pulled a lot of it. They left out the Girl Scouts, then they ramped it up so it was a mass murder, so it was a whole bunch of people instead of only 3, and then they bring in the witchcraft and the all various little elements to try and like this, but I felt the level of disrespect paid was very insulting. Now, that may have only been because I'm familiar with the original story, so maybe that's where I'm coming from, or maybe I'm just being too sensitive on this. But I do appreciate it when a story that's pulled from the headlines pays some level of respect to where it's getting its story. Yes, Angel Rivera says the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders 1977. And I didn't think that they did this. That they tromped all over the memory of this story. That they pulled so many details from. They tromped all over the memory of it, and then just delivered this piece of crap that just, kind of shit all over it. But maybe it's just me. Am I alone in that?
To a degree. So I would say that, yeah, when you pull something from real life, it deserves a level of respect. But I think they honestly like stepped so far from the original material that if they had taken and gone just a little ways, they had taken, you know, maybe the actual girls, like even if they renamed them and had twisted that somehow, monopolized on it, but included that or other elements, it would have been more insulting, but they didn't. They deviated so much. I think the greatest insult is them saying that it's based on a true story, because the only damn thing it has in common is there were kids involved. In this, it's a lot of instead of a few. So many, in fact, that you can't personally identify with any of them.
Right.
I mean, they're like lemurs going into a creek, to be blunt about, you know, about how it plays out on there. But them trying to monopolize on the title by claiming a movie that's about these murders has nothing really to do with these murders was probably the greatest sin. And they're trying to do something similar to, you know, what Texas Chainsaw Massacre did with Ed Gein, where really the greatest similarity was the living room with all the props that were similar to what he actually had in his house. But when you're dealing with something that is, how do I put this? When it's serial killing or something huge like that happens, it becomes part of the public subconscious, you know. It's part of the common culture, and you can capitalize on that to a greater degree without it being such an offense. But when you take something so small, so personal, to so few individuals, and you use it as a marketing strategy, yeah, that I would definitely call disrespectful. They never should have, even if that was their starting inspiration, it never should have been part of the marketing. It never should have been connected at all. If somebody stumbles upon it and says, hey, maybe this is connected, fair enough, but don't use it as part of your production. Just leave it where it was at the beginning.
Right. And I agree. I have to agree with what let me see here. Where did it go? Someone had a really excellent comment there. Oh yeah, Sarcasm said, yeah, tell the original story or like update like something that pulls off of the original story without the damn ghost hunters trope. In essence, it's kind of the idea that ghost hunters, that people, that the paranormal investigators, like, you know, whatever they're trying to see, even though, you know, wherever you stand on the existence of ghosts or anything like that. But ostensibly what they're doing is that they are investigating places that are steeped in tragedy and are typically, you know, supposed to be haunted. And you could say that they're using that to kind of prop up, you know, what they're doing. And then they go out and they do their investigations, and you can say, and sometimes you get them, like, you know, they're like yelling at ghosts and doing stuff like that and acting all kind of crazy, trying to elicit some kind of response. Sometimes it turns out to be completely fake, like it was over on Ghost Hunters and some other shows where they have fabricated their findings. But ultimately, it kind of took that trope of the paranormal investigators utilizing tragedy in order for ratings, and then going in here, and then this movie in itself. So there's kind of a meta element there as well. And maybe it just didn't sit very well with me. Knowing what I know about the actual events, it just didn't, it kept me separated from the story. I couldn't invest myself in these characters. I couldn't invest myself in Daniel Harris's, you know, in the writing, in like the writing of the movie, because Daniel Harris's fake, like that Dollar Tree freaking Catholicism that she was throwing around there towards the very end, I was like, that's not that at all. You're just repeating the same line over and over and over again. It's not a prayer. So it was just, you know, maybe I just knew too much. Maybe I know too much to look at this. I'm like, that's wrong. I wouldn't have done that. No, that's not how you do that. And it just kind of falls apart, unfortunately.
Yeah, that wasn't just you. That was the whole movie. The thing that kills me, without giving away the end, is like, they tried this. They tried what you were supposed to and didn't do it correctly, because ideally you kind of weave in things throughout the movie that pay off towards the end. They're woven in very subtly, very carefully, so they're not jumping out and screaming. So if you're going for a twist, you know, you get the Sixth Sense, where it was in front of you all along, but you just weren't putting it together. But with this, like, they suddenly do this snap ending, and they didn't build to it. What little they had built, they actually shot straight to hell with that ending.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's just everything was poorly executed, just completely clumsy. I mean, insofar as if you're going to retell the original tale, it's been done before in a lot of different movies where they go in and they explore this tragedy and they reveal more of what's behind it to varying degrees of sensationalizing. But I think the best example I've ever seen was actually a video game done post-Columbine where I can't even remember, I think it was the Columbine Massacre or something, and it had people in an uproar. It was a cheap little RPG game, but if you played it, it actually went through what happened beforehand, everything that led to it, and it told the story of all these kids. It told the story of the shooters and the victims and everything, but people didn't see that because of the sensationalism around how, you know, the video game industry is evil because this is how it, even though this is just one guy at a computer. But you have the chance to respectfully explore what happened, and you can explore the issues that lead up to something. You can explore the people be involved, do it respectfully while still, because I've said before, we explore death, we explore fear through horror while still including those elements. They did none of the above. They took it, they stretched as far as they could. They jammed in things that if they had taken any one of them and run fully with it, if they'd run fully with the ritual instead of just their symbols, you know, let's cover them up. That's bullshit.
Right.
Good luck with that. You know, it has this ultimate power and fucking duct tape's going to kill it.
Or it wasn't even duct tape. I think it was gaffer tape.
Well, what's killed me is the whole thing without, I'll give away a little bit of the one scene is that he's in the damn shed with the duct tape or gaffer tape, whatever bullshit it may have been, trying to cover this thing, and all he does is put a little X across it instead of actually covering it up. There's spray paint on the shelf right behind him, man. There's a can of black spray paint right there. 5 seconds, you're done, you're out. But instead, he just tries to kill a ghost with a boat oar. It just, if it weren't so bad, it would be funny. But they thought, hey, if you're making a terrible movie, know you're making a terrible movie and make a terrible movie. But don't think that you got gold in your hand when you're holding a steaming pile of shit. That's all I'm saying.
This is true. This is one of the situations where you recognize what you have, and they unfortunately they didn't, and they took themselves way too seriously. This movie took itself too seriously, and if they had simply, I would have been able to look past a lot of the problems that I had with it if they hadn't been so, if they hadn't been so morose. It's like, there's so much gravitas. There's not great. It's manufactured gravitas. You have nothing here. But unfortunately, I think that's another example of that amateur filmmaking. That there was nobody behind the camera directing this thing. People who were in charge behind it. There was the biggest name attached to this was Danielle Harris, and then maybe a distant second would be Chad Michael Murray. But I do know that what's his name. Courtney Gaines, obviously, has been around, from Children of the Corn. He was in it, but he was only in it that long, so they probably only had him a moment. So, but nonetheless, you definitely could have been better. I can understand why it was good on paper, but not in execution at all. So, but I want to ask the audience, and we're going to kind of break off of this one, because we don't get to talk about her all that often. She's one of my favorite Scream Queens. But Danielle Harris has been around forever and is a staple in the horror community. One of the best Scream Queens out there. Kicking off her career with Halloween 4, and been around ever since then. And the number of horror titles under her belt are amazing. And I'm curious, what is y'all's favorite Danielle Harris horror film? So let us know in the live chat or down in the comments below. Or at weekinhorror@gmail.com what your favorite Danielle Harris horror film is, whether it's going all the way back to the beginning with Halloween 4 or Halloween 5, or something. I personally really dug her in Stakeland because I'm a big Nick D'Amici fan and Larry Fessenden fan, so I like those movies. But she's done a ton, so let us know what your favorite, maybe even the new Halloween, the Rob Zombie Halloween films. I thought she was pretty damn amazing in Halloween and Halloween 2 as Annie. I thought she was pretty badass.
Yeah, she's one of those that's honestly, she's been in so many, it's hard to pick, and she is a quality actress. Like, she doesn't get the credit she deserves. She never got her jump like Jamie Lee Curtis, but that's the thing. It's a toss-up between Halloween 4 and maybe Hatchet. Kind of
Oh, yeah.
Hatchet pisses me off because you beat me in bloodbath with that son of a bitch.
Victor Crowley versus the Rougarou. That was a fun one.
It's got a bad taste in my mouth.
All right. Oh, Freddie Notch is like, she's only 5 feet tall. She's tiny. She's itty bitty, but she's a powerhouse of an actress. Hell yeah, we love some Danielle Harris over here. All right, this will be an interesting one. What do we got next?
I'm not talking about no. We'll get into it. It's not a terrible movie, but it has some issues. From August 26, 2019, we've got Rabid. Roll that probably slightly interesting footage.
Come on.
Just had reconstructive surgery. You can't take your bandages off just yet.
Rose! I want you into work on time.
I just don't get Rose. She's so weird and sad. Did you ask Brad to bring me here?
Can I get you a drink?
Oh, who told you? I'm so humiliated. Why would you do this to me?
Schadenfreude, the pleasure derived from someone else's misfortune.
I want you to keep in mind that this is going to be a process. Not to worry. With the proper diet, you'll be able to live a perfect and normal life.
Stem cell manipulation is the key to life. They are already being sold to the most wealthy.
That's your first sign, right there.
Yeah. Your laundry bill's got to be hell.
Let me look at you. Wow.
That's incredible. It's like the accident never even happened.
No, it's not like it never happened. I've been having vivid nightmares. Why am I dreaming about drinking blood?
Well, people who dream about drinking blood often have unfulfilled yearnings. It's tied to the guilt of desire.
Where can I take you, Rose?
Nowhere.
Ow!
Too rough for you?
You went insane and bit me.
An outbreak of rabies. Avoid all animals and humans exhibiting violent or erratic behavior.
It spreads like an STD. If we do not stop it, it could affect all of mankind.
What the fuck?
How's your appetite?
That was the entire movie right there. No. All right. So this is directed by Jen and Sylvia Soska, a.k.a. the Soska sisters. Written by them, based on a story by John Serge, and starring Mackenzie Gray, Stephen Hussar, Ted Atherton, Benjamin Hollingsworth, and Laura Vandervoort. In the story, the main character, she is injured in a car wreck, and they use stem cell therapy to heal wounds to her in her abdomen and her face, as you saw in the trailer. And then it has a nasty side effect of she begins attacking people, and she thinks they're hallucinations. I will say that much. So it doesn't play out quite like you might think it would, but her victims in turn start acting rabid, really actually zombie-ish, aggressive zombie-ish, and it spreads as a plague while she's still going through this in her main life. And it is a remake, like they said, of based on a Cronenberg film, which I don't know that they should have remade, or at least not this way.
So that's the big question on this one. So first and foremost, I got to point out, so the big kicker on this one was, of course, the practical effects. Given Cronenberg's original, which was 1977, given the Cronenberg original, you got to look at what you've got to, what you have to work with as far as practical effects go. Now, in the original one, and the people familiar with the Cronenberg one, is that the character of Rose played magnificently by Marilyn Chambers. After the medical procedure that gives her life back, she develops a kind of stinger that comes out underneath her arm that stabs people and drains them of their fluids. It turns them into like these kind of like rabid zombies. They're running around causing chaos. And the beautiful thing about I'd say the one thing that the Soska sisters really have a good handle on is how to convey horrific body horror in the most magnificent way. That it really is an art form from them, and they pay a lot of attention to what they're going to be putting on camera. This was evident. It's been evident in all of their pictures. I think American Mary was one of their absolute best in conveying body modification, and that was a magnificent Catherine Isabel production. But they achieved this in this one, so far superior to anything that Cronenberg could have put together. Especially if they'd even gone to the lengths. They really did more in the monsters that Rose was creating. But what they did as far as practical effects, they knock it out of the fucking park. That this was a grotesque and kind of stomach churning film in many respects that can be tough for some audiences to sit through, to get through. And that's what that's the story it's trying to be told. It's body horror. But that's kind of where it ends. Yeah, I'd say that's the one solid thing this film has going for, is just the advancement in practical effects has allowed us to tell body horror stories a hell of a lot better and convey the grotesqueries and the horrors of them. So movies like Cronenberg's last effort before his most recent one, which is Crimes of the Future. His previous one before that was Existenz. And Existenz had some stuff in it, but Crimes of the Future is definitely not for the squeamish, just to put it out there. Because that's just the advancement we've gotten in our practical effects, the things that we can accomplish. So I got to give it to the Soska sisters that they really, really captured that aspect of what Cronenberg was trying to do. The problem is that it was the narrative behind the story. Cronenberg told body horror and conveyed these graphic stories, the incredibly graphic films, as commentary for things that were going on in society. All good horror is commentary. It takes something that is either eating at the local, kind of like the populist mindset, and it puts it through hyperbole, puts it up on screen, allows us to kind of deal with these things. And Cronenberg was a master at that. Whether it was I can't remember the car crash one that he did with James Spader. But whether it was The Fly or whether it was Videodrome or whatever, he always had something he wanted to say. In the original Rabid, it was ostensibly about I would say societal gender roles. It was about the role that Rose played before the accident, the role she plays after the accident, female empowerment, and how oftentimes the power of women is grotesque to men, and how we respond to that, and how Rose, in her newfound kind of like strength and appetite, however you want to depict that in film, but in her new strength and appetite, how men react to that. And so this commentary on women's roles in society, and he pulled it off beautifully. Cronenberg's commentary is always the highlight of his movies, what he's trying to say through his grotesqueries. Unfortunately, and I think you pointed out well, it's so intense in this particular film that what the Soska sisters were trying to pull off, which is kind of like a continuation of that conversation, and to tell the story kind of like more through Rose's perspective, instead of watching Rose go through these, but tell it kind of through her eyes. They lose some of I think they lose the plot in that. They lose the point in amidst the spectacle.
Yeah, so the things that they chose, the special effects were amazing. What they decided to show was amazing, but I think it fell so short on what it chose not to show, that it pulled it out of the body horror category for me, because they showed these rabid zombies. They showed a little bit with her, but not much. They showed the damage to her face, but that healed up. But as far as what she was becoming in the aftermath, if they had done this typical tactic of exposing it little by little till the end, and we'd see in full force what she's becoming, I think it would have been far more effective. But I think that they fell into the trap that they were trying to expose, because the first thing that gave it away to me were the nurses. Because the nurses, if you look, they're wearing the classic white hat, short skirt outfit back when nurses were over-sexualized and they were, quote unquote, put in their place by having a different uniform than doctors. They didn't have the scrubs and everything. And we finally pushed that by the wayside and they're slipping back into that. But more so, they focus so much on keeping Rose sexy that they have sacrificed the fact that women are forced to meet these sexual standards, and they've tried to meet those standards instead of relating it as a medical horror that it is, showing that she's going through these deformities, that her body does these strange things. They keep it in the shadows so that they don't sacrifice her sexiness, her sex appeal in the movie. At least that's how I felt, and that is part of the problem. Is trying to hold women to this higher standard. It's the girls don't poop sort of childish mentality, instead of, really delving into what she is going through and becoming.
The big kicker was that was in the writing, and I think you're right on that. To kind of piggyback off what you're saying, was we're putting more in Rose's journey, except unlike the Cronenberg original, where where the audience is sitting outside of it. We are watching the story take place from from the audience perspective. We're seeing the story. We're not put directly into Rose's shoes in the original Cronenberg. In this one, we are more the Soska sisters put us more in an intimate relationship with Rose and allow us to experience the story through her eyes. And there was a big difference there, is that in the 77 one, Chambers' Rose is not really able to articulate what's happening to her, because it's so extreme and it's so beyond the pale of her, of like what you could possibly imagine, that she's left in a state where she really can't articulate what's happening, beyond beyond her feelings. And all the men around her, so her like the doctors and the men that encounter her, are doing the typical guy thing. They're basically, they're reducing her, because it's just another hysterical woman. She's just, a woman who can't control her emotions. So he really puts that on, where Chambers' character is reduced. And then that's how we experience that. We get to see it from the bird's eye view. But in this one, we're in Laura Vandervoort's shoes. We get to experience the change as she's going through them. So it makes it a more intimate experience between the audience and the protagonist, or antagonist, if you want to think about this. But in this particular one, Laura, in the writing, Laura can articulate what's happening. She's able to grasp what's occurring in her and sees it a little bit better than Rose did in Cronenberg's, which I think changes the story to something that's not intentional, and that maybe the Soskas kind of putting their own spin on this. That women can be empowered and can do as they please. It doesn't matter what the presentation is of the female empowerment, but women are allowed to do this. And I get what they're trying to say. I get it, absolutely. And I agree with it. But I don't think this was the story for them to do. Not because it diverged from what Cronenberg was trying to say. And that was the important thing.
Well, and they could have, if they chose to go more pro-women empowerment, they should have honestly leaned into that a little bit more. Because it almost feels like they didn't pick a path in that regard. Are you going to try to use her to set an example for, women's empowerment? Or are you going to use her for women's struggle? You kind of... Yeah, every woman is going through both of those at the same time, or at least they're trying to be more empowered, but they're experiencing the pushback. But really, when you do a horror movie, like you said, hyperbole, you have got to pick one facet and emphasize the hell out of it. And it almost feels like they included the zombies, as I'm going to call them, because that's really what they are. They're not just rabid, they're zombies. The plotline feels secondary to such a degree that it's like they included it so that they could use the Cronenberg film's name. Which I understand them wanting to bring that name over if they're going to explore that, but they should have probably leaned less into that zombie factor and more into what was happening to Rose and what she she was doing, because it really does feel tacked on, especially because until the very end, it's not, that rabies is not affecting anybody that's close to her personally. So you've got these events she experiences with people that are close to her, and then, you know, these jackasses that she attacks, and it spreads from there.
Oh,
and
poor
it doesn't
CM Punk.
really trace back.
I feel bad for CM Punk because CM Punk got the short end of the stick in this one, and he also got the short end of the stick of the girl on I think the girl on the third floor, which was a Netflix horror film that he was the lead, and he was pretty damn good in. I thought he was pretty good, but he got totally fucked in that one too.
I think they may have wanted over the top part for him, given that he came out of or given his pedigree, shall we say.
So Sarcasm says in the Soska one, she infected guys and the guys infected the women, and I think they did that intentionally as well. And I get that, and I get what the Soska sisters were trying to do with this. The Soska sisters have a very unique voice and a very unique vision. You can see this in American Mary, where I think that they were that was a script, that was a production where they were firing on all cylinders, and it's a beautiful example of what they're trying to get across. Unfortunately, with this one, they're remaking something. This is the problem with remakes, especially when you try to put your own stamp on someone else's story. Cronenberg's original one was apropos to the time, for the 70s, for the late 70s. The fact that they originally Cronenberg was I think they were originally going to he wanted to cast Sissy Spacek in the lead role in Rabid as Rose, but the producers balked because of Sissy's Texas accent. So they had a problem with that. So then it was Ivan Reitman who recommended that they bring in Marilyn Chambers, and Cronenberg was like, "Really?" Because the fact that she was a centerfold, she was played adult film star. She was an adult film star, and so Cronenberg was like, "Okay, we'll give it a shot." And she came out wowing everybody and impressed Cronenberg. Cronenberg was like, "Holy shit!" I think his comment was that she was one of the hardest working actresses he had ever seen. That she gave so much of herself to that role to make that movie, and that it just, like, the weight of it just hung on her, and she was so transformative and amazing in that, which just goes to show, how the talent that was there. And it would have been overshadowed by the fact that she was an adult film star, but we got to see her legitimately, really carry a film. And if that had been updated, if we had taken what Cronenberg was trying to say and bring it to 2019, 2020, whichever one, if you had brought that up and kind of maintained it, I think that would have translated well, especially with the Me Too movement going on. This would have still been societally important. Unfortunately, what the Soskas do doesn't translate the way that Cronenberg does. And the gravity of the film is kind of lost in the spectacle and lost in the Soska sisters trying to accomplish what they normally accomplish. And that was kind of like shift the angle to the female perspective. And it's, which doesn't let it land in the audience's lap the same way. Because Cronenberg's bird's eye view forces us to look at ourselves. Because it's like, we are viewing society. We recognize it. And now we're forced to view it, and that lets it hit in the stomach. Then when you see all the grotesqueries and all the real Cronenbergian stuff, that's what makes it. That's what forces you to digest it. In this one, we're so busy being with Rose that we don't see the societal effect of it. We just get one woman's story, which is still strong, still powerful, but still goes down differently. And is my opinion, from a commercial perspective, the vast majority of audience can just let that one slide away. So, arguably a kind of a missed opportunity, a strong story to retell that had some Cronenbergian vibes and a real chance to go real good with the practical, to go really powerful with the practical effects, which the Soskas are known for. But they just kind of let themselves get in the way of it, which was a damn shame. And I thought Laura Vandervoort was very effective. That she was good, or everyone who was in it was pretty strong. I don't see the necessity. I didn't think they had to ugly her up, because Laura Vandervoort it's stunningly beautiful. So there was no real necessity to kind of ugly her up. That's what Cronenberg wanted, because Sissy Spacek can do the kind of like mousy, unattractive to the bombshell that she was. If you look at Carrie, You know, she goes from the mousy girl at the beginning to up there on stage, and she was just like the stunner. So, because that's one of the unique attributes of Sissy Spacek. Laura Vandervoort, not, you know, she's pretty much the blonde bombshell no matter wherever she is. So,
yeah, they with Cronenberg too. Cronenberg has never been afraid to be ugly. It's damn near a trademark of his to capture ugliness perfectly and poignantly. The Soska sisters are actually known a little more for sleekness and a sexiness, and I think that just not just in the characters themselves, but in the way everything was portrayed and shot was kind of betraying to the plot too, because I mean, everything in it is beautifully shot, whereas they would have been better to have, like, because, I mean, even when you look at the sets and everything, the way they're assembled, her perfect friend's apartment, the silk, you know, doctor's gowns, that's like,
it was
fucking leaving.
That should have been the first clue. Be like, are those like standard issue? This is a hospital issue, those? Did you guys bring those from home?
But everything was just that way, and they would have been wiser to have more of a take and use that sleekness. That sexiness, and to what is the word, to kind of contrast that with some of the ugliness of what happened. But even when she's killing her victims with the zombies, yes, they show it, but it still feels like an aside. Whereas when she's attacking her victims and going through that, seeing what she's going through with the change, you know, it's getting worse and worse, and she's more and more aggressive. If they had been more body horror on that, it would have served the overall plot a lot better.
Right. Agreed.
All right, so that'll lead us into our question for listeners and viewers. Which do you prefer, Rabid the original or the remake? You know, let us know, weekinhorror@gmail.com, comments, or the live chat. I'm still with the original. I think the Soska Sisters had a lot of potential, and it just got spoiled. I still don't know if anybody could do a better remake, though, to be honest with it. It's not... Anything from Cronenberg is so original that, like, even touching it might kill it.
It's like butterflies' wings. You know, you touch them, they never get off the ground again. And, like, you try to imagine somebody trying to remake Videodrome. There's no way. You couldn't touch it, you know? I got to go with the original myself. Tony Regime, as well, is in the same boat. Got to go with the original. Cronenberg just has that's his unique... That's his unique approach. He knows what he wants to say, and he knows how to say it in the most grotesque way possible. And if you haven't seen, anybody out there in the live chat has not seen, or anybody who listens to this afterwards, if you have not seen Crimes of the Future, Viggo Mortensen, Kristen Stewart, and I know that people will be turned off by Kristen Stewart, but she's not that massive. This is more about Viggo Mortensen's character. Wow. So be prepared. Gut-churning and really thought-provoking. Very provocative body horror in that one. So if you've got the stomach for it, because it's absolutely a return to form for Cronenberg. Chris Durham says, I don't usually write nasty reviews, but that DVD player tried to steal my Pink Panther Strikes Again DVD when it died. Megatech. I don't know what he's talking about.
The Videodrome, I think.
Oh. All right. So let's jump on to our next one. And our last one for the night, we've got released August 27th. This makes me kind of sad, but we'll dive into it. August 27th, 1993, and we have the adaptation of Stephen King's Needful Things. Let's check out this trailer. And Max von Sydow, the only good part of this movie.
Castle Rock Entertainment and Stephen King invite you to visit Castle Rock,
that's the narrator you pick for
a quiet little town whose population has just increased by one.
Contrast it, but don't need a tourist ad.
I guess I have to. We can't have one without the other.
What's he look like? What the hell does he look like?
May I take this opportunity to welcome you to Castle Rock on the good Lord's behalf?
Why not?
So where are you from?
Ohio. I've been in this business a long time, and I've learned the pleasure of offering my customers what they really need.
He came here to destroy us.
Oh, you wussy. There have been 2 murders and an attempted suicide in this quiet little town, and Mr. Leland Gone is at the bottom of it.
You are disgusting. I like that in a person.
Everybody that's got it coming is gonna get it now.
The young carpenter from Nazareth. I knew him well. Promising young man. But he died badly. A famine here, a flood there, a little bloodlust, a broken heart. You can't win. I've got God on my side. We're having fun now. How's it going?
They killed my wife. Is that wrong?
Hey, these things happen.
All right, so we've got Needful Things, directed by Fraser C. Heston and based on Needful Things by Stephen King, written by W.D. Richter, and starring Ed Harris, Max von Sydow, Bonnie Bedelia, J.T. Walsh, and Amanda Plummer. The story follows, set in the staple in Stephen King's mythology in Castle Rock, Maine. The story follows the character of Leland Gaunt as he opens up a new shop in Castle Rock called Needful Things, where he supplies things that the people of Castle Rock really desire, and supplies them for a price, invariably leading the town to turn on each other and basically decimate the town in the wake of it, and all hell breaks loose, for lack of a better term, on this one. The kicker on this one, this was such a damn shame, is the first and foremost, Max von Sydow, legendary actor, makes this damn movie. And I think is from reading the original book and watching this, he nails it. He nails Leland Gaunt. He brings him to life. I thought he was fantastic, especially all the little tidbits. Almost like, because he's the devil. Like, he's ostensibly playing the devil in this, and even in the book, though in the book it's not so cut and dry of what Leland Gaunt actually is. But I like the movie adaptation because they ostensibly say that he's the devil and he's shown up and he's just leading the town to destruction. And so he comes and he plays it with that subtle joy and that malevolence, that cheerful malevolence that only the devil could really portray. And obviously the best thing about the movie. The problem with this one, and despite the fact that you got all the things that make King great in this one, was the problems between the studio and the actual film production in and of itself. Because the book itself, they take a lot of elements from it, but they also drop a lot. But originally, there was a massive cut of this one. Originally, it was like, there was a 4-hour, when this premiered on television, there was a 4-hour slot for this to sit in. And then when it was released, kind of like in the theatrical edition was released, like an hour of the film was actually cut out so they could put it out on, I think this was out on VHS or either way, but the home release was severely reduced and we actually lose a lot. The problem in this one, I think, is what they invariably ended up doing is taking an interesting novel that King had produced. It was supposed to be the last in the Castle Rock series because the book ends with the destruction of Castle Rock, and in this adaptation made it dull and depressing. Because the film, whereas in the book, there's always this essence of hope that runs throughout the book, that the townspeople can overcome Leland Gaunt and actually make it through this and survive. But in the book, it's extreme. But in this film adaptation was extremely nihilistic, and I still am not able to figure out why these problems occur with trying to adapt Stephen King. They adapt The Shining for television, and they didn't leave anything out of the books. They just did a clean 100% adaptation, and it was boring.
Kubrick does it and it comes out weird. And then they do things like this. I mean, some are decent, like Cujo was decent, but more often than not, they end up changing some aspect of it, or changing the atmosphere, or changing the tone of the movie, and it comes out just not great. And this is one of those ones, whereas they delivered a deeply nihilistic and extremely cynical movie in which, ostensibly, it doesn't matter how good you are or what your intentions are, you can't win, and this is out of your hands. You're gonna get fucked either way. It's kind of like, it made me feel like, to put a biblical spin on it made me feel like Job. Where Job is sitting there after all this bullshit, and it's kind of like, well, why? Oh, I had a bet going on. Yep, fuck it. It's whatever. And I kind of get that sense where it's like, it left me sitting there like, well, these people, this whole situation is like, well, you're just at the mercy of people that are entities that are more powerful than you. You can't do shit about it. Just deal with it, accept it, suck it up.
Well, that's the thing you see with every King movie, and I haven't read nearly as much King as you or some other people. I've read a fairly good number of books. I think I'm up towards 30 of them. I've read enough to know the basis of his mythology, and you've got two levels of problems with every King adaptation. And the first one is one that's suffered by every author, more so by King, is that the book includes thoughts that are not easy to translate to action on screen, because the cardinal rule, show me, don't tell me, when you're making a movie. So it's hard to bring that about, and because you can't do that, it's even harder to weave, like you're saying, this feeling of hope. It's even harder to weave that in the background. And then you've got, you're talking about he's sort of the devil, sort of not. That factors into the entire King universe. That's the next level of trouble with King, is that if you drop in some of his mythology, just pieces of it, it does not work by itself. At best, if you're not familiar with the mythology, it's just something that's sitting there that you don't get. At worst, it is a weirdness that can put you off with certain stuff. So you can only delve into a certain level. But yeah, King's greatest asset is that he portrays very normal people in very normal circumstances that come under something way heavier than they're used to.
Right.
And it changes it. And seeing the experience, not just seeing, experiencing internally the psychological changes that people go through, what they think as these things happen, some of their background and stuff really is what makes the story. And having seen this one before, knowing more about King, and then after, I can say that, with the original viewing, it's okay. On a good day, it's a good movie. It's not never going to be great. And I just think that, like Charlie Welsh in the chat, he said it's not the worst adaptation, and it's not, but it's also not the best material for adaptation, because you really have to, you can't just take the best-selling books that Stephen King's made and translate them over to film. The Stand was a rarity, and it still didn't capture nearly everything. That book, especially if you get the full size, is immense. But I agree with you on that, and that's why I was kind of put off by the CBS one, because they kind of tried to do that, but then they got into the non-linear storytelling, which I thought was completely unnecessary, and the way they cut that up. And while I dug, some of the casting choices that were in it, ultimately the CBS version was by far, because they really went for broke. I mean, we're talking, what was that, a 6-hour production, or was it 6 hours or 4 hours? 4-hour production. Which one? The original miniseries?
The original CBS one.
The original, I think it was I think that was 4 hours. They're usually spanned out to 4 hours with commercials, so it'd be like 4 times 45 is. I'm not doing math. Even then still did not, like you said, capture the real gravity of The Stand, but hit all the right notes. But not to mention magnificent performances across the board. Molly Ringwald, Gary Sinise, Jamie, the guy who played Flag was magnificent. I totally spaced on his name. The live chat's going to kill me on this one. I should have known his name straight off the bat. But everybody was magnificent in that one. And same with Misery. NA brings up Misery was a great movie, and that is because James Caan and Kathy Bates
are magnificent actors. Rest of, James Caan recently passed away. But Kathy Bates and James Caan were magnificent. Their chemistry and the way they conveyed those characters, absolutely brilliant. But yeah, you're right, is that there is so much to this. In that I think it was Mike Flanagan who directed Gerald's Game, which was a brilliant adaptation. And of course 1927? The one with Thomas Jane?
Oh yeah,
the farmer and his son who killed his wife.
I think that's the name of it. I know that one. Yeah, that one's like
And because Flanagan, for some reason, is a director that is able to really capture the gravity of what King is trying to convey. But he does not eschew the grander multiverse, the greater universe. There's little hints as to bigger things that are going on, but not so much that they pull from the plot, but enough that fans will love it and recognize it, and enough that it adds some mystery and intrigue for the generation that is not so versed in King's work. In this one, they took one that's cemented in King's greater mythology. Castle Rock has a long history in Stephen King tradition, going all the way back to the Dark Half. Going all the way back to the Dead Zone. Dead Zone, when Johnny came back and did the thing, and then with Cujo as well. And so there's Castle Rock ties into a lot. There's a grander mythology there. This one, they tried to take Castle Rock by itself and kind of like break it off from the mythology and tell an encapsulated story. And it just doesn't work in that respect, which is why I think ultimately it comes off I felt cheaped out. It felt very nihilistic, and I don't like that. It was similar to Hearts in Atlantis. Hearts in Atlantis was deeply tied into the grander mythology of what King was trying to do, and they despite some magnificent performances, Anthony Hopkins for one, they just dropped the ball on so many things, just because they ignore all those connections, all those little tendrils that go out to other King's works. And they just, like Dolores Claiborne, they fucking nailed it. Not only just Kathy Bates and David Strathairn and, a number of other, Helen Muth and, magnificent acting across the board, but they let you know. There's hints, like and like when they did Storm of the Century. Fantastic. Jamie Sheridan, thank you, wrote it in the last name, it was Jamie Sheridan. And, like in Storm of the Century, when they mentioned the eclipse that took place in Dolores Claiborne. It's little shit like that. And even though you've got Ed Harris, who was good, Max von Sydow, who completely carries the damn movie, and then of course J.T. Walsh, who just like chewed the scenery and just fucking ran with it. I thought he was fucking great. I love me some J.T. Walsh. Damn, they just could not save for themselves. And I think that this is also an example of when the people in charge don't legitimately, when the higher ups do not have a fucking clue what to do with it. They have the rights and they're just gonna fucking make it. It's like, here, we've got this. Let's put it out there, and just like, but they don't. There's no respect for it. It takes a certain person who's familiar with the source material to really make it happen. And despite the fact that you have magnificent performances from, like I said, it's not the worst adaptation. You can see the studio effect all over this, or the network effect all over this bad boy. That's how they had to cut certain things out, leave certain, try to mold things to make it a kind of inclusive story. And you can't do that with King's work, unfortunately.
Well, and that's one of the, it's got a feel of nostalgia to it, all the stuff that came out of the King miniseries era, but it also suffered being a book of the moment sort of club where they took the ones, like I said, that sold best and they tried to convert them, whereas they're better off if they're going to approach it the way they did, where each is individual. Select the best stories that translate best. If you take and through the development process it doesn't feel right, drop it. But if it's a corporation behind it, they're like, well, we invested this much money in it, just finish it. And I don't think we're ever going to be lucky enough. If we had some company that had the money, the influence, dedication to bring everything in under an umbrella to interconnect all the stories, just pick the best ones, seed in those connections to tell the story a little better, I think they would be a lot better off. But I don't think we're ever going to see, at least in our lifetime, somebody attempt to do that. And I mean, talking about Castle Rock and how important Castle Rock is. the damn company, and they always partner with somebody else. I think it was New Line Cinema for this one. But the company that always was dealing with them was Castle Rock. Was a production company developed solely for helping bring King's work to video, and I think it converted to Lionsgate later on. I think somebody purchased it, but I'm not 100%. But that's how important Castle Rock was. And they did a new series on it. It had some good elements, but it wasn't great.
The first season had excellent elements. The second one lost it when they tried to bring in Annie Wilkes and do that thing. That I think they just I saw what they were going for, but they completely jumped the shark when they did with that. They try to go, here's something established that everybody knows from the King universe. Let's run with that. It's like, nah, you should have gone with the more nuanced stuff, like Haven did with the Colorado Kid. There's ways to do it, ways to not do it, but it's going to take minds like Flanagan who really understand the source material, so we can get excellent adaptations of things like Gerald's Game of 1922, in the long grass. Even though that was joking, but there was input there. So that's what it takes, and it's just respect to the source material. And I say corporations have got to, if they're going to do it, do like Disney did with Marvel. Okay, let Marvel run its shit. Give them the money and let them do their thing. They know their stuff the best. If a production company is going to finance a Stephen King adaptation and the director knows the stuff and knows what he's going to, just like, this is what we're going to do, let them run it. Have no input. Just say, we're signing the check. You guys go and do your thing. We trust you. But here's where that trust does not exist, is when you get adaptations like this. So
yeah,
and Charlie Watts brings up Under the Dome was one of an example. Yeah, but The Outsider on HBO, fucking magnificent. Jason Bateman in a role that you've never seen, and I thought that was super fucking creepy. Really loved The Outsider adaptation.
Yeah, I'll have to watch that one. I balk at a lot of adaptations anymore. It's just, especially if you look at who's producing, because that's the thing, that horror more than anything suffers the syndrome where somebody who wants to make a quick buck thinks that you can make a movie where if you check all these specific boxes and you make this formula, going back to Camp Cold Brook, that you're going to get a great horror movie, and it's not. There's got to be a core that you're working with, a theme, to use a more common term, that's under everything, and people who are passionate about it, and one person won't carry it through because somebody will come in and fuck it up. But you get a group of people at the core of the project that know what it's about, are passionate about it, and willing to push it through to the end by whatever means. That is how you get a good horror movie. And thankfully it's slowly dissolving, but people think that horror is not worth that unless you're a fan who has gone into making movies.
Like
oh goodness. I can think of so many people that you should throw money at.
Definitely. So, given that, and just like, and you can't always rely on a particular actor coming along to save your entire goddamn production, because it's the reason this wasn't one of the worst adaptations is because of the legendary Max von Sydow, and not only his performance as Leland Gaunt, but his charisma and his chemistry with every other actor in this one. Every relationship he has with every single person in the town is nuanced and palpable, and you just feel it. That he is just like dance for me puppets. Y'all are so ignorant and I just find you so entertaining when I watch this happen. And then even at the end when he loses, he's kind of like, better luck next time. I'll catch you on the next one. And then he deuces out. I was like, he's the only reason I enjoyed this movie is watching his scenes and just watching his interactions with everybody. So I have to ask, given the powerhouse that Max von Sydow is and his legendary career, I want to ask the audience, what is your favorite Max von Sydow role, or Max von Sydow film? Whichever one he has starred in. I know there's probably going to be for me,
It's going to go back to The Exorcist. I thought he was amazing. I thought he was magnificent, but he's been in so many things. And from horror, comedy, drama, adventure, all across the board. There was nothing the man could not do. But let us know in the live chat or, of course, in the comments below what your favorite Max von Sydow role is. Would love to hear what you think. Let me see here. Tony Regime says, Week in Horror, producers seem to forget that they are paying directors and cinematographers to do what they do, so they stand over their shoulders and tell them how to do their job. Exactly. You're always going to run into these really, really funky problems between the guys upstairs, the people upstairs and the people in the trench. And the director, it's their vision. They're the ones trench. Very similar. It's one of the worst. I say one of the biggest cautionary tales was the Warcraft film. And I know it's not a horror film, but I'm a huge Warcraft franchise fan. I love what Blizzard created. But Duncan Jones stated that making that movie was like death from a thousand cuts, because he has a vision, he has a script, he knows what he wants to produce. But when you've got Legendary up above you, and you've got Blizzard up above you, and you've got all of these little companies that are above you, and then everybody is taking their little pieces throughout the entire production, it's just, you eventually get it done, but you're like, ugh, and you never want to do it again. Production companies, studios sometimes have to recognize when they need to take a back seat and just let the craft happen. Let the filmmaking happen. This is why the MCU was so successful in Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, all the way up to Infinity War. I think they've kind of lost the plot a little bit in Phase 4, but all the way up through Infinity War. Because I got some problems with Endgame myself. But all the way up there, that's because Disney bought them. They gave him the money and said, Marvel Studios, you go run it. And we're gonna stay out of your way. And that's what made those movies successful, is because the check writers knew what lane to stay in. That's what's important. And it's not just in big films like that. It's even in horror. You just got to know what lane you're in. Let's see what we got here. Frayed Edges is in the house. Good to see you, Frayed. Says, I had never really noticed how bad an actor Amber Turd is until I watched her in The Stand. It was like watching a high school actor. She was terrible in that. Laura San Giacomo fucking rocked that role in the original CBS miniseries. She had no business being Nadine. Amber, had no business being Nadine in that production. She was cast for her looks alone. That girl has no talent, and what is arguably one of the more important roles, because so much hinges on Nadine's character in The Stand, and she completely dropped the ball. I was aggravated as shit about that. That really, really pissed me off.
You would think that somebody would shit in a person's bed could play a person that goes crazy, though. Like, you would think it would just be natural. It should have just been like, just be yourself, Amber. Just sink into the role.
Oh God, it was like watching it was like watching a board act. Just like nothing. There's just nothing there. Nothing whatsoever. Yep. Let's see. Rodinell's name brings up Flash Gordon. Yes, Ming. Yes, Max Bond said I was Ming. Definitely. A lot of love there. Sir Cab says, I'm with you, JL. Definitely The Exorcist. Fantastic Tony Regime brings up The Seventh Seal. Fuck yeah.
That's gotta be mine.
No, Angel Rivera. The Outsider was a standalone King novel that was based upon the central monster of it took other people's forms, and it ate people and took other people's. It took the images of other people so that they could travel around in secret, kind of like in disguise, and like murder and eat human beings. And the way that story is told is absolutely magnificent. And I think it's one of Jason Bateman's finest roles. Up there with Ozark. Bateman was magnificent in that. So fantastic storytelling all around. Let me see here. Ronell Sims says best Max von Sydow, Strange Brew. And yep, Charlie Wood says the newsstand was pretty bad, but god damn, she was awful. Yeah, she was terrible. She was terrible. Oh, let's see. Yes, Travis Brown. Max von Sydow was the voice of Vito from Ghostbusters 2. Oh, Tony Regime says that's twice Amber Heard has given a poor performance on The Stand. I see what you did there. That was hilarious. That was fucking brilliant. Sir. That was very clever. Very clever, sir. All right. So, I think it is that time. Yep, it's about that time. It is trivia time. And I see that Rodent No Less Name mentioned in the chat that the pint glass arrived. Fantastic. Your t-shirt should be on the way, the one that you won last week. But we are giving away another t-shirt. We're giving away a Season 3 artwork t-shirt again this week because we are about to retire, because it's about to go, because we're screaming into Season 4 here pretty soon. And that artwork is currently underway. And I'm really excited to reveal that at the season finale that's coming up next month. That's going to be a lot of fun. But we are giving away another Season 3 artwork t-shirt to the winner of tonight's trivia question. So, if you're ready, Aaron, go ahead and give it to him.
Yeah, I got the live chat up and ready to roll.
Awesome.
How many Razzies was the Island of Dr. Moreau nominated for? How many Razzies was the Island of Dr. Moreau nominated for?
All the Razzies.
Yeah, that was mine. I'm like, every last one that year.
But we are looking for a number.
Yeah. They will get you in the past, though. I've seen them, the Razzies, go back like 20 years to nominate somebody.
Oh, let me see here. Let's see. Sarcasm says, already got it. I'm out. That's okay, Sarcasm. Let me see here. Oh, wow. Bunch of
got
deals.
it. An answer from...
Boom, there it is. Travis Brown. It was Travis Brown?
Tony Regime cheating his ass off, dropping every number that exists.
Oh, so, am I correct on that? Travis Brown got it first?
Yep.
Awesome. Congratulations. Travis Brown. That's good to see Travis Brown winning trivia again. It's been a second, but congratulations. Weekend Horror official Season 3 shirt. Awesome. All right, Travis Brown. So yes, that was 6 Razzies that the Island of Dr. Moreau was nominated for. I think it won 2 of them. But 6 Razzies that film was nominated for. Tony Regime guessed 7. Rodent said 0. And Annie said 69. Like all the Razzies. And Angel Rivera, right behind it with a 6, but that was close. Tony Regime said 8, 9, 10, just throwing numbers out there. 11. Chris Durham Music Channel 42. And good to see you, Chris Durham. Thanks for hanging out. And Raven Darkstar said, too damn many. Yes, too many Razzies. 6 is just by far too many.
Probably more than they actually deserved.
Jinju says, they created 7 just for this movie. Oh, but congratulations, Travis Brown. He says, I looked on Wiki. You're allowed to. You're allowed to get those Google fingers going and look up the answers. The answers are on the internet somewhere. So, but congratulations, Travis Brown. We will get you your official Season 3 shirt featuring the Season 3 artwork of all of us, kind of Breakfast Club style. And that's a celebration. We're going to get those out to people because we got the Season 4 shirt coming up here pretty soon. I think that y'all are going to love it. So congratulations again, Travis Brown. We'll get that printed and out to you ASAP. All
the
right.
only cheating is if you pay Johnny for the answer, and that depends on how much equipment we can buy with that money.
This is true. It's very true. All right, and that is going to bring another episode of Weekend Horror to a close. Thank you all so much for listening. We truly hope that you enjoyed the show. Join us next week when we look back at the classic 80s gothic slasher Hell Night, starring Linda Blair, Matrimonial Stalker Terror, and He Knows You're Alone, the unsettling art house horror of California, and the extreme limit-shattering French horror Martyrs. So get your vomit buckets ready for that one. A massive shout out to all of our amazing patrons who continue to help us make Weekend Horror the incredible success it has become. Thank you all so very, very much for your support. Joshua Olsen does all of our amazing artwork for the show, and his designs are absolutely incredible. His store is www.badsamurai.store. Just pop over there and give a look at what he's got. I know that there's something for everybody, but badsamurai.store. For more horror fun, be sure to check us out on the socials for daily horror posts, the Daily Splatter. You get a little bit every single day. Be sure to combat that evil algorithm by dropping a comment, liking, subscribing, and smashing the living fuck out of that notification bell, because YouTube and all of its bullshit. And lastly, if you love what we do here and would like to and able to support our production, you can by joining and enjoying the tasty benefits of one of our many patron tiers, like we mentioned earlier in the show. Patron tiers as low as $1 a month, and you can get cool. You get your name in the banner, but we have stuff for the higher tiers, all kinds of cool stuff. But if Patreon is not your favorite stalking method, you can always support us directly through the PayPal link. Links to all of this, including our Discord community where you can hang out directly with all of us, are in the description below. And remember, the goal here at Week in Horror is global horror domination, and we cannot do it without you, our amazing audience. So pretty please, with the severed, infested head of Clint Howard on top, go and share the absolute fuck out of our little show. Thank you all for being the greatest audience a podcast could have. I am JL.
I'm Aaron.
We will see you all next week, and as always, stay scared.